Well, hello. The November 2nd, 2023 meeting of the Corvallis School Board is called to order at 6:32 p.m. In the interest of public health and safety for all community members, especially immunocompromised individuals and their families, the Corvallis School Board will continue to offer a virtual option for board member and district personnel participation. Additionally, public comment is available at some meetings, both in person and virtually. Information about how to provide public comment is available on the Corvallis School District website. The board agenda and packet, as well as the link to the district YouTube channel, are available on the school board page on the district website. Public meetings are live streamed on the district's YouTube channel, and a recording is posted to the same channel, typically the day after the meeting. Tonight we have Directors Algebra, Largent, Hawkins, Finger, McDonald, Co-Chair Tomini in attendance in person, and Co-Chair Jones is excused. And the first order of business is board member reports. Does anybody have any reports?
I had a really nice meeting today at the district office, and we talked about strategies to help communication about resources and accommodations, and developing new strategies to make sure that our meetings are as open to as many people as possible. And I really appreciated the time and thoughtfulness of the district staff. And if anyone has concerns about accommodations that they might like to see in our meetings, to please get a hold of us or contact the district office so that we can make sure that this is a truly inclusive environment.
Thank you. Any other reports? It's just upcoming that some of us are going to the Oregon School Board Association conference next week, so looking forward to that on next Friday and Saturday. So we'll have a report back, I'm sure, from all of us going at that time. And it's not a report, but I did want to, at the beginning of the meeting, since most people are tuning in right now, say thank you to all the teachers for the conferences going on right now. I know that's a lot of prep work, and we really appreciate all that time you're spending to help family members and parents and adults and students' lives know what's going on with them. So thank you for that. And the next, that was everybody, right? Everybody? Okay. Next order of business is the Oregon School Boards Association and National School Boards Association updates, and that's Sammy.
Thank you, Lou. I want to apologize. There's no written report today. I was on the road, and happy to report that since September 19th until November 1st, which was yesterday, I went to all the 20 of them, about 4,500 miles drive, a little bit more than that. And it's been very, very insightful to learn from community members and leaders in education for community colleges, ESDs, and school districts about the issues at hand in the legislature, and report back what the OSBA did on behalf of membership last 2 years and what we're anticipating in the coming 2 years. As you may have been aware of through our participation in Albany, the topics of statewide bargaining and the topic of emerging challenges from districts were at the highlights, including policies of interest and importance, and also the budget. So there will be more information I am willing to share, hopefully after I get all the thoughts together and formally OSBA provide a report to the Legislative Policy Council that both Lou and Sarah are on, and they will have a direction around what kind of the membership is asking for and how we can advocate on behalf of the membership in terms of legislative priorities. And those legislative priorities will come back to us here at the school district, to our school board, to vote on them. And if we vote on them, that will be the marching orders for OSBA for legislative advocacy for the 2 years to come. So I'll share that process as it comes. We have on the agenda as well 2 resolutions in addition to the election. One of them is the Rural Caucus approval. It requires 2/3 of the membership, OSBA members, to approve the caucus. And in general, there's support to it, and it will help rural communities while we're not rural. it will help uplift voices from rural communities and some common interests as well to what we want to accomplish and on issues that might be shared with them, like free and reduced lunch, IDEA, funding special education, staffing retention. All of these issues are common but also unique to them. The second resolution is a cleanup language for the bylaws. It requires approval as well, and happy to answer any questions about these. One thing I want to report as well is that you may have received on your email from NSBA early October, probably October 11, on your email, a training opportunity that is virtual on December 13th in the afternoon for the inaugural summit on rural education. So it might be of interest for you. You can sign up, and the registration is complimentary. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Sam. Any questions? Okay, thank you. And next is the superintendent's report. Ryan?
Thanks. I have just a couple of updates, things to share. The first one is, Melissa's not here tonight because today she became a grandma. And so celebration for her, and we gave her the night off to be able to enjoy that new life and being able to be with her family. So exciting. Born here in Corvallis, and will someday be a CSD student, I'm guessing. So pretty cool. And another introduction I want to make is Nancy Griffith, who's sitting in the crowd tonight, is the new assistant superintendent at the Lynn Benton Lincoln ESD. Typically we have the assistant superintendent from the ESD come to one of our meetings during the year, and so Nancy's here tonight to listen in and get a better sense of the work that's going on here in CSD. So thanks for being here, Nancy. Nancy has been a teacher, an administrator. She's worked at the ESD since 2019 in their teaching and learning areas of the ESD, and is now the assistant sup. So welcome, Nancy, to the new job and also to the meeting tonight. A couple things that I just want to highlight in terms of things that are upcoming. We're hosting an upcoming listening session for staff, families, and community members to provide input on the district's updated sustainability plan. And so that's going to happen here Thursday, November 16th. It starts at 4:30 and goes till 6:30. It's the night we have a school board meeting, but it's an open house, so people can go at any time. So if you have an opportunity before the meeting to go and learn more about the updated sustainability plan, I'd encourage you to do so. I plan to be there for that time. Also on November 16th, our school principals at our secondary schools will be here. And so for those of you that are new to this process, each principal will be here, and they'll have, and we'll basically rotate you as well as a student representative and a member of the district office team from principal to principal to have conversations about what's happening in their specific buildings. And that is something that we'll do for our work session in November and in December. So prior to that meeting, if you have a chance to review that information, sometimes people, the conversation really stays on that improvement plan. Other times there's questions that board members ask because they want to get a better sense across the system about a specific area of interest. And sometimes questions are just about how can we support you at the school level. So again, it's an opportunity for principals and board members to interact and have a really good dialogue. In my past experience, there was a time when one school came at each board meeting and sort of presented about what was going on at their school, but it was more of a presentation, and this is more of an informal opportunity to meet with one another and build relationship and talk. So again, it's worth the time, and looking forward to that being our work sessions for the next 2 months. This last week, I attended a community dialogue meeting at LBCC, along with a couple of CSD representatives. The focus of that was thinking about LBCC as a Hispanic serving organization. There's some criteria about what that means, but there's also some supports that come with that. And so I'm going to be able to continue in a conversation about the Latinx community and the ways that we think about pathways and cleaning up some pathways and making them clearer for folks who are leaving as graduates and headed to LBCC. So just wanted to let you know that that work is just starting up, but I was able to be a part of it this last week along with Marcianne and Nikki. And so again, it was a good opportunity for us to, again, think about ways of engaging with our communities and supporting community. Also, we're at the time of year with our athletics where some of our teams are at state or in state competitions, either as a team or as individuals. And so we've had a really successful fall and some teams still playing, which is fun to see. And then on the art side, I know that a while ago you all got invitations to some concerts, and one of them is upcoming. So November 7th, there's an orchestra concert at CHS. So if that's not on your calendar, you do have an email with a little bit more detail about that date and other dates to follow. So if that night doesn't work for you, there's other opportunities as well. But I just wanted to make sure that you had that information. Also, I wanted to talk about inclement weather. As the weather begins to change, it's always a reminder of the ways that we communicate with families related to school delays and closures. So we put the safety of students and staff first in these decisions. The decision to delay or close school is based on the ability of students, parents, guardians, and staff to get to our building safely, the suitability of our facilities for occupation, and the conditions of local infrastructure. So all those things are taken into account. We want to get that information out as soon as we can. Typically, I'm out driving early in the morning because I want to be able to have a sense of it as I think about high school students in particular driving out, specifically driving out to CV over the hill. That's one of the areas I spend the most time driving in the morning, just trying to make sure that that's going to be safe for students. And I also am thinking about students who are waiting for buses throughout our community and what that means as well in terms of safety. And so those are all the considerations that go into place, along with feedback and input from our bus drivers and our transportation department. If they say it's not safe to go, it's not safe to go. And so we're always coordinating and talking with one another. So again, we haven't had to do anything yet, but the weather is starting to change, and it's just a good opportunity to remind community how we make some of those decisions that need to be made to keep people safe. So hopefully this will be a nice, wet, warm year. I think with El Nino, that's what it's supposed to be, but we'll see. I don't hold my breath. And then the last thing I wanted to do is I wanted to acknowledge the concerns we've heard in the last few weeks regarding AP and honors math courses at our high schools. A theme from these concerns is that the district is getting rid of AP and honors math. Just to highlight, teachers in both schools are making plans to add advanced math courses and building pathways that connect to local colleges and universities. The paths teachers are creating will lead to more AP opportunities and students earning higher amounts of college credit before they graduate from high school. We know advanced AP courses prepare students to be successful in college. One of the pathways teachers are discussing will allow students to take honors geometry and have a pathway towards AP pre-calculus and AP calculus. In that pathway, students would earn 16 credits before leaving our system. So I know that our teachers are meeting and discussing those pathways and are doing really good work with one another. And I know that will continue, and at the same time, recognizing that we support having those advanced classes for students. So just wanted to share that with you. With that, I have covered the things I wanted to cover. And again, congratulations to Melissa Harder on becoming a grandma.
Thanks for those updates, Ryan. I see Sarah has her hand up.
Yeah, I just have a comment. I just want to voice my appreciation for building the pathways to college, because one of the frustrations I deal with my students is they take math and it doesn't transfer and they end up retaking things, and so having clear pathways that make sense for students is really key. And I can tell you, as someone who works with college students in a STEM field, it's great if they come in with calculus or pre-calculus, But what really seems to make the biggest difference in how successful they are is if they've had college algebra. And so, just having a clear pathway, a way to get math, it's Math 111Z now, done in high school will potentially make a big difference for our students.
Any other comments?
I just appreciate the work that our math teachers are doing.
And making sure it's the math class that matches with the organ transfer map is really important too. So it sounds like that's what's happening. And so I appreciate that, because yeah, it's what you were highlighting with making sure it transfers. Yeah. Any questions, comments? Okay. All righty. Next on the agenda is public comment. We will now open the public comment period. We value the lived experiences of students, families, staff, and community, and welcome public comment as a necessary and important part of the work of the district and board. And I'm going to read the guidelines for public comment right now for you all. The complete guidelines for public comment are available on the registration table at the back of the gym and on the board's website. I will share a few important points now. When it is your turn to speak, please come forward and have a seat and direct your comments to the board. Speakers may offer objective criticism of district operations and programs, but the board will not hear complaints concerning individual district personnel. As a reminder, you will have 3 minutes to make your comments. I will alert you when you have 30 seconds left and when your time is up. I'm going to point out right now too, those little set of lights are green when your time starts. Yellow is 30 seconds left. Red means you're out of time. It's really hard for me to interrupt people when they're talking because I want you to be able to say what you're saying and not interfere with your 3 minutes. But once it hits red, you're going to hear me say you're out of time. And then following your comments, the board will have 3 minutes to ask clarifying questions. It'll be the same timer lights going on, but are not able to engage in conversation. If board members would like to revisit a topic or issue brought up during public comment, they may do so at the appropriate time in the agenda. And before you start your comments, please state your name for the record and state whether you reside within the school district boundary. And so I just wanted to reemphasize that we can't engage in conversation, which is kind of hard for board members that like to talk with you all in the public. And but we are listening, and we could ask you questions, and that's about it. So, and with that, Kim, who do we have first? Okay, and don't forget, everyone, start with your name and if you reside within the boundary. Yeah, let me mention that too. This needs to be green for us to hear you, and there's the button. So once you press it, it'll turn green on the front. Yeah, the rectangle button on the mic stand.
Hello, district officials and school board members. My name is Catalina Contreras Colin. I reside in the Philomath residence. I have children in the Corvallis School District. I am a parent and advocate in the Latino community of children attending schools in the Corvallis School District. Last year, in October 2022, there was two friends of mine, Sarah Lynch and Denise Hughes-Taffen, who spoke about my advocacy work and highlighted what I have done in the community, in the Latino community, with families who have children with special needs. This time, I am reaching out myself to reiterate that and highlight what's going on. I'm reaching out because sadly, I have an overwhelming number of Latino parents of English language learners coming to me with concerns regarding safety issues, inequities, mental health needs, and lack of support in special education and what their children are experiencing, all due to the lack of classified staff in the classrooms. Not to mention that there are families that have not yet met their respective school's health navigator and/or family liaison to receive support with basic needs. Some of these parents have already presented their concerns to school staff and administrators and have been told that the schools are taking matters to resolve these issues. Although they have helped to solve these issues temporarily, what gives these parents the assurance that these problems won't occur again? Sadly, we are now seeing the consequences of losing 50 classified staff. These families are now gathering to stand united to bring this matter higher up. I am currently just listening to them and providing as much support as seen fit. I'm just one person and cannot take this alone since I am not fully informed and I'm not the appropriate position to resolve these issues, although I have very much loved to do it. Therefore, I am doing what I can for them to have faith in our school system and to rely on their school staff and admin. Time is against us because they are hurting for their child and are becoming impatient with their needs, issues, and concerns not being addressed. It has taken me years to earn these families' trust to open their struggles and concerns, and because I have these relationships, I feel accountable for this change to happen, and they would feel accountable as well. I ask that you hear them, validate them, and honor them, and establish these relationships with them as well, and rely on their mission statement on equity and inclusion, and see the positive for change. These families are behind me, supporting me, out of 34 more families that support me. Thanks for appreciating the voices of these families I am representing.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Okay, go ahead, Judah.
Do you have any, you've mentioned the barriers to communication with the board. Could you identify any of those barriers with more specificity so we could address the gap in communication between this board and those families?
Yes, definitely. Some families didn't even know the meaning of school board meetings. This is the first time they're hearing it. The fact that whether I know or school officials know that there will be interpretation services provided to them is out of the question of something that's highlighted for them to know, I can come to this school board meeting. The language is a barrier. Transportation is also considered a barrier. Whether there's childcare provided or that they feel that there's representation in their color of their skin, the language, and which is why I'm here to give this first step for them to feel welcome and comfortable coming. My dream is for half of this room to be filled with BIPOC individuals and for them to feel comfortable to come to you, to come to their school admin. Any further questions? I'm open to them.
Anybody else have questions?
Nobody
Okay,
else
Judah,
Or didn't answer your question
Judah, you
as
can-
well.
And then I have a follow-up
You
question.
can ask a follow-up. We have about a minute and a half left of.
If you were to identify a first step in eliminating that communication gap, what would it be?
Definitely, I'm going to say about 50% of families look at their emails that they receive. The barrier is for sure that technical difficulties with accessing to open an email, or there's too much information being sent. And to some families, they need bullet points, bullet information, bright, and eye-catching. And in general, when we have flyers sent, it's overwhelming when we see so much information being put out. So I feel like if there's papers sent to the children's backpacks, in the past, that has seen a high percentage of success rate, as in having families show up to conferences to speak with their teachers freely. And unfortunately, because the schools are closed to having them come in, that has established a barrier itself. So, and we get it because of COVID and safety issues and protocols. That's established, but I think that's what would help.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Yes.
Gracias, Kathy.
Sí se puede.
Who's next? Kim? And the mic's still on, so you don't have to press it again.
Hi, I'm Sarah Lynch, and I live in the Corvallis School District. And I just want to start by giving appreciation to Kati and the families who are here today and sort of recognize their leadership and advocacy. And I hope you see as an asset and as they come to you, you'll find ways to go to them. But I'm here actually to talk about the board goals. Earlier today, I sent an email with sort of a fire hose of feedback. My remarks today will really focus on key issues of developing a graduate profile and centering community engagement. I'll start by sharing that I'm one of those 37 people who watches the board meetings, and the conversations you all have had about these goals have been the most authentic and engaged work I've seen you all do. I helped organize some of the board engagement sessions, and I feel accountable to those families and to you all to keep leaning in. And I do this sort of work for a living, helping dozens of districts and states develop strategic plans and graduate profiles, so my feedback is a sincere reflection and synthesis of this unique place where I sit. So let's go. Let's start with goal number 1. I really want to push you all to reframe this goal to focus on students and outcomes, as its current framing of learning experiences shrinks away from that responsibility. Further, a profile of a graduate should be an inspirational and actionable definition of student success, spanning academics, social, emotional, and cross-cutting skills, a holistic definition that our district co-creates in partnership with students, staff, families, and community. As the goal is written now, it seems to equate a graduate profile with a list of 21st century skills, TBD. Including academic knowledge and skills in the profile creates coherence in our expectations for our students and educators, rather than sending mixed messages that are most harmful for Title I schools who have higher stakes attached to conventional academic measures. And I'll also tell you that the places around the country where a graduate profile has had the most impact are those places that prioritize community co-creation from the outset. Co-creation leads to shared ownership and strengthens the work. It's a strategy, not an implied process in parentheses. My written feedback proposes you build out a human dimension of equitable systems that recognizes community engagement as a way to build trust, repair harm, and develop mutual accountability, much like what Catalina has invited you all to do today. I also uplift the need to name that supporting our educators should be a goal rather than a scattershot of strategies and more. But I'll end by applauding the way you started the goals document by grounding into the tenets of student voice. I know you all are reading Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown, and one of the biggest lessons I've learned from Adrienne is that how we work is the work. And the tenets of listening to student voice, working with an equity lens, and learning out loud through continuous improvement is how we'll actualize whatever goals and strategies that are in that final draft. Thank you all.
Thank you. Any questions from board members? Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm appreciating your comments about creating the profile of a graduate. And although I think our profile should be unique to Corvallis, I am just interested to see what other districts have landed on. So if you have any good examples, if you could share them, that would be fabulous.
I could do more than that because I used to run a national community of practice with districts and states that are implementing profiles of graduates. So I can share different examples, share different development strategies, some that are grounded in like culturally sustaining practices, and then also like how they embed it in school improvement and like teacher leadership stuff too. So I'll do that as you all proceed, but thank you. All right.
Other questions? Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, guys.
Next.
All right. Can I start whenever? Okay. Yeah, my name's Noam. I am a senior at Crescent Valley High School, and I reside in the Corvallis School District. Obviously, I think among student voice at Crescent Valley, there's been lots of concern about math policy, math curriculum, and I'm not here to talk about that. I wish I was here to complain about math policy, but that's not my purpose here. That's not what I'm using my voice for. I want to express concern about the lack of clarity about these math curriculum changes, about the math policy, because, I mean, it would be great if the students could actually have some semblance of understanding about what these math changes are, because students among the school, I mean, there's lots of potential misinformation among students because we simply don't really have a clear grasp of what these curriculum and math policy changes are. And this is where my concern comes from, because when we have this lack of clarity among students, then it can lead to things like students being misinformed and creating some forms of chaos among other students, creating concerns among other students, because we just have this lack of clarity. And I think this just comes from a simple lack of communication among students. Because as someone with parents that are receiving Parent Square emails, I know for sure that parents have been receiving emails regarding math policy and math curriculum changes, but why haven't students? This is, in my opinion, quite problematic, because if students don't have clarity, regardless of if they're for or against math policy changes, they can't express their opinions in meaningful ways because they're simply less informed than the parents are and less informed than board members might be. And I mean, this creates like inequities among students simply because we have students that might have access to more board information, that might have access to parents that are sharing these emails with them, and they have more clarity among what these math policy changes are, what these math curriculum changes might be. So regardless of my opinion on the math curriculum and the changes that might be being presented through teachers or board members, I am just expressing concern about the lack of clarity with students about these changes. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody have questions? Go ahead, Judah.
More with me questions. If you were to give examples about what good quality communication about this topic to students would look like, how would you describe that?
I would describe this in in two ways. So first, I think that emails to students using applications like Student Square or like emails, because I think a lot of staff members among our school have access to large email lists. They can send announcements, updates to these students. But I think the other way is through our student representatives, perhaps making these, giving a larger voice to board student representatives so that they can actually share the changes that are happening, because they would know the best what's happening through the district and the board.
Any other questions? Looks like Sarah has one.
Would sharing information during math classes be helpful?
I think this would be helpful to an extent. The only immediate problem I see with this is that not all students are enrolled in math classes. So for example, a lot of seniors who might have finished their math graduation credit requirements aren't going to be taking math classes. So I think the two most effective communication methods, if you want to give announcements during classes, would be English class, because all students are in English because you need 4 years to graduate, or, for example, classes like Advisor. But I think the one concern with these classes is, unfortunately, many students are failing to attend these Advisor classes comparatively to English classes.
Any other questions? They asked my question. That was mostly just about what the best communication is, because I know not all students check emails too, and so that's finding that nice, happy medium for engaging students. And we always welcome students to email us directly at the board as well, at board@corvallis.k12.or.us, and that goes to all of us at the same time. So if you think of anything later, feel free to always reach out to us.
All right.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Next.
Oh, it's on, okay. My name is Genevieve Rach. I have two children who have been and going through the school district. My daughter is a sophomore in college, and my son is a senior at Crescent Valley High School. I'm an immigrant to this country, and I gave up maths in 9th grade, so I have no love for it, but see its value. And I've been fighting for math in this school district for years. My question to the esteemed board members is, why does this district hate math so much? In a STEM college town, no less. I have heard much about equity and equality, and in all my years as a parent in this district, if your goal is equity, then you have failed. As an immigrant to this country, I will say we immigrate for many reasons, but one of the top reasons is to have better opportunities for our children. Yesterday I met two parents who have just immigrated here from Lebanon, and they asked me why their daughter is getting math way below her level, which means her opportunities of getting into a good college are 0 to 1. As top colleges across the United States for STEM degrees need Calculus BC as a requirement to enter for engineering and physics degrees. And we all know we need more women to reach these goals. Now, as we no longer have differentiated math in elementary school, we have caused our children to only reach pre-calculus as their highest level. This has led to 1, parent sending their children to private education, 2, hiring tutors. In your latest email to parents, you stated pathways to higher maths. How do you propose this besides parents throwing money on it? To take math at OSU and LBCC costs money. How is it equitable for the lower income families and children? Having calculus saves children huge debt as it cuts the amount of college classes they need in college. I'm not here fighting for my children, but the children in lower income families. For those parents who are working 3 jobs and cannot come to a board meeting because of what we have seen in our state and around the world, the bigger picture is if you dumb down education, rich people move or put their children into private school, which has already begun in this town, which means the money leaves the public schools, people won't vote for improvements in these public schools and support the public schools. Eventually, towns get destroyed. I'm here to wake you all up. Stop destroying our public schools and our town. Differentiated instruction works close to equity gaps and facilitate each children's success in promoting social and racial justice. Fair and standard do not promote equity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from board members? I had a question. Early in your comments, you said that there's failure, and then later how are you describing the failure with the math as high as it's taught now, being the top part?
No, right now it's okay because many children can reach Calculus BC, but right now the elementary school kids that will reach high school in a few years' time will not reach Calculus BC, which means that parents of those children, which I know of those parents, have either moved their kids from elementary school and put them into, I can't remember the private school in this town's name, I forgot, Ashbrook, or I know of faculty members of OSU who are commuting from Portland and they're no longer living in Corvallis. They actually moved to Portland so their kids can go to Portland schools in order for their kids to get a math education because of the standardized math, like having 5th grade math only in 5th grade. So that is what that's why I'm saying it's a failure to the equity because of those children who do not have money or income, who are great at math, cannot actually reach those goals because their parents cannot throw money at it. Their parents cannot put them into private schools.
Okay. It looks like Sammy has a question too. Thank you for answering my question.
Genevieve, thank you so much for your comments and really appreciate you advocating for this very important topic. So I don't want to be dismissive, but my perception is the detracking math concept that has been implemented in several elementary schools and continue to be implemented in some others will not preclude students from being able to access calculus. And I hope maybe we'll get a correction or clarification down the line on that. But if that's true, where did you get that idea, or how did you arrive at that conclusion, if that makes sense? That's the detracking in elementary is going to prevent calculus.
If you're tracking on the track, so if you're doing 5th grade math right now in 5th grade and there's no differentiated math, the highest math that you will be getting to in high school would be pre-calculus. You wouldn't be able to, if you're going to do, because math you should do, and as I'm not a math person, as I told you that I dropped out of math in 9th grade, and I'm not a person to advocate for math. I really actually hate it. But I actually see it, I see its benefit, and I pushed my children to have that benefit of seeing it as something that actually gets you further in life. And I was going to say, math goes in stepping stones, right? If you don't have pre-calculus, you can't do calculus. If you don't have algebra 2, you can't do, you just have, it's the stepping stones thing. So you cannot jump. That's what I'm saying, the
Jenny,
equity of jumping.
we're
Okay.
out of time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time, Jenny.
Yeah.
Next. Did we miss any cards? Okay.
All right, so I will start by saying I am also a high school senior at Crescent Valley High School, and I'm also here out of concerns due to the math curriculum changes. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight, but getting right to the point, the proposed changes, at least to my knowledge, are actually going to worsen issues of equity. They will also worsen the access to education that many students will have, and it wastes valuable resources. So I personally really do believe in equity, and I applaud this board's strive to achieve it. But the proposed changes to detracking and the modifications to advanced math classes are actually going to be contrary to this goal. Studies such as research published in the journal Learning and Instruction disprove the fact that these methods actually help students, because it is better to bring students up to a higher level. So if you want to truly engage students and better their access to education, it is best to give them more opportunities to succeed instead of take away the higher level math classes. Now, I do agree that detracking is a good policy. It can definitely help solve lots of equity issues, but you should, instead of keep everyone down at the lower track level, you should push everyone to the higher track level so everyone remains engaged in higher level maths. So it's already been talked about by Genevieve about how this will further exacerbate stratifications between high income and lower income students because of private schools and the ability to move out. So I will not elaborate much on there, but I will say instead that research from the University of Geneva definitely highlights the fact that students who are in these mixed classes actually tend to have a worse self-image of themselves. If you try to put students that would normally be on a higher math class in with students who are not able to access that math and are not able to, quite frankly, reach those levels with the previous education they have, they will compare themselves unfairly to students who have had better resources prior to them. And as a result, this will lower their self-image. Then the last part about this is the resources. The problem with getting rid of a lot of higher level math classes, well, not getting rid of, but modifying them and trying to redirect resources, is that these resources are being spent on new curricula already, and as a result are not able to be truly allocated to students who need them. So it really doesn't actually solve a lot of the problems that you try to say and talk about here.
Does anybody have any, thank you. Does anybody have questions? Okay, go ahead, Shauna.
Johnny, it looked like you might have had a little bit more that you were planning to say, or were you at the end of your remarks? If
I
you
kind
had a
of
little,
summed up the bottom, but if you want, I can elaborate a little bit more.
would you mind sharing that with us?
Yes. So there have been research studies done by College Board, which is a rather credible institution, that show that AP classes and further advanced understanding in schools through higher challenging classes tend to actually prepare students more for college. Regardless of the amount of college credit that a student will get from taking AP classes, if you let them take higher level AP classes, they tend to have a better understanding of subject materials and be better prepared to actually handle the challenges that colleges provide. So by taking these away, not only do you get rid of a lot of opportunities for students to go into higher level colleges and institutions, but this also tends to bring down the quality of their education.
Any other questions? Did you want to?
I don't have a question, I just have.
Okay, Ryan.
So one of the things that we got asked or communicated about was around communication. And just so everybody knows, the CHS math teachers met yesterday, the CV math teachers met today, working on these details, and so communication will be coming soon. And so I just wanted to let people know sort of where we are in process, so that everybody has that sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
That way you know it's coming, okay? And thank you, Johnny, for your time.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Oops, sorry, you had a question? Oh, okay. Okay,
Yeah, I think
it's, we have to stick on the, we can't, because of the rules around public comments, we can't engage in conversation, sorry. I know it's really hard because I always have a lot of things I want to say too. I understand, but okay, so I think that is, we are able to respond to general themes and stuff during board comments, but that's way at the end. And so that's our last one, Kim, is that correct? Yes. Okay. Hearing no further comments, the public comment period is now closed. I wanted to again thank you all who came to support and or said some words, so thank you. And you all are welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting and listen in as well if you'd like. And the next item on the agenda is board goals, first reading.
All right, team. I wanted to give you all a chance to look at a draft that I put together to take into account the feedback that you provided to me. And so we created a updated document for you. In addition, we shared a copy with you that has markups so you could see through tracking the changes that were made. And third, I wanted to include for you an example of a profile of a graduate, and that one came from Washington State. I shared that with you not as a profile for you to adopt, but I felt like based on the conversation last time, I needed to get a better sense if that was an area that folks wanted to work on and spend time working with, I think Sarah said it well, about working with community around that. So I wanted to, again, based on the conversation we had specifically around that goal 1, that was the conversation where we started to talk about a profile of a graduate as well as expectations and accountability. And so I wanted you to have that information as we go into the discussion tonight. So as I was thinking about our time together, I think that ideally I would get input from you related to goal 1, and in goal 1 also conversations around profile of the graduate, and then move down through each of our other goal areas. Again, recognizing that this process started last winter with community input, listening sessions, themes were identified and brought to us and reported out. Then in the summer, the board came together in a work session with staff and community members again to look at a first draft. From that, we have brought that forward. You've given me additional input. And so what I tried my best to do was to incorporate the input that you provided into the version you see in front of you today. So that's where we are in the process. I would be open, I think I'm open to conversation about what are our next steps. Sometimes when we go through a process like this, we look at it as a first draft or a first read, and then we bring it forward again with additional markups for you to adopt at second reading. At the same time, with board goals, one of the things we've also done in the past has been to provisionally adopt them. That happened last time as we thought about how to make sure that the community input aligned with what we were putting into our board goals. And so one of the things I am thinking about is if you are feeling good about these goals and you're also interested in spending time working on a profile of a graduate, one of the areas or thoughts we could have is to do some sort of provisional adoption of the goals document and then spending some more time working on the profile of the graduate. That would be one way that I could see us moving forward and progressing based on where we are tonight. The conversation around the profile of a graduate came later in the conversation, and so I think it's an important one, a good one for us to have, and at the same time, if we're feeling pretty good about what we have in terms of the goal document, it would be helpful to me at some point to have something that is solid enough that I can start to put together metrics. I can be working on activities which come below those strategies with my team. So I feel like this is sort of a long preamble, so I'm going to sum it up for you one more time. I think it would be valuable to look through each goal individually based on the feedback you've provided, thinking about profile of a graduate as we think about goal 1. I would also want you to think about, is this far enough along that we would adopt it provisionally and then spend time thinking about a profile of a graduate? Or if that's not the case and that's not where you want to spend your time, that's okay too. But I wanted to at least bring that to you in concept for us to think about as a team. So that's really where I think we're at.
Thanks, Ryan. When do you need, because this school year, just so it's clear for everyone, is being based off of the current board goals. Like this, it's not like if we adopt this, it's going to take place in January. It's going to be for next academic year to guide the work. In order to develop all the pieces under the strategies with your team, when is the latest you need this back by, like approved by, do you think, to do that work for next school year?
The sooner the better,
Okay.
and here's why. Because as we think about things like adopting a budget and prioritizing what we're working on, this helps to drive some of those decisions. And honestly, when we return after winter break in January, we're already thinking about next school year. We're not thinking about the current school year any longer because all the major decisions for that year have already been made. So I would say it would be ideal to have this completed this winter so we could then move forward as we plan and do our budget work for next year.
Okay, thank you. The reason I asked is I'm thinking about some of the community engagement that has been happening around the board goals and how some folk are hoping probably to see this draft and may not have seen it on the webpage. So like making sure we get that out to them before we have a second read to vote on. And I know we also have the school improvement plans coming up, so we have a little buffer time. So I want to make sure folk understand, like we want to take our time with it, and we also need to make sure that Ryan and the staff have enough time to plan for next year. And I really appreciate that we're being thoughtful and slow on this too. But yeah, Sarah, I seen your hand up for a minute. You want to? Are we ready to jump into goal 1? Yeah, because we're already into our allotted time. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I frankly would not be comfortable adopting it right now as a provisional goals because I feel like goal 1, what we heard a lot of in the community engagement, sort of across the board, was the community would like to see sort of what, I feel like without a strong profile of a graduate that actually tells us what a graduate from Corvallis School District is going to be able to do, I feel like this goal is still missing the academic outcomes piece that the community has asked about. It would beyond, we have the piece about the Department of Education metrics, but what our community has told us was they want to see metrics beyond that. And they want expectations to be beyond that. And there's nothing yet in this goal that responds to that, that concern. And so I think if we had a profile of a graduate that said, you know, our graduates are going to, the example we have is a lot of soft skills, which are great, but for academic achievement, I think people want to know, like, what are students going to, you know, be able to do?
Sure.
And I don't think we're there yet. And the other comment I had was, in strategy number 1, I was thinking adopt and implement culturally relevant and academically rigorous curriculum, so that we're including both of those. And I assume that the culturally relevant curriculum is going to be academically rigorous, but I don't think, if we're putting this out for the community to see, to understand what our school district is working on, I think that academic rigor needs to be included.
I have, I'm just going to reflect some thoughts back on that comment is, thank you, Sarah, is that I don't think it's wise to shape an entire district based on very, very specific sets of curriculum if that's not everybody's goal. If everybody's goal in this whole district was to go to certain colleges, perhaps, that would make sense, but not everybody is. And we can still offer that curriculum without it being the goal of every student, if that makes sense. And so that's where, and I hear what you're saying about making sure the academic language is in there to meet that goal. So perhaps like a happy medium between those is saying based on the goals of the student instead of it being the profile of the student. And that was one of the things I was thinking about too, is like we're creating a profile, and I can't remember, let me look at it again. I think it was in that same, it was in the same thing, list the attributes of our profile of a graduate here. There's the part that's missing that we're hearing, because we're hearing from a lot about the academic piece, about rigor using that language. And we're also hearing from other community members that may not be as heard sometimes, that that's not the focal point. They want students to be able to go out into careers that don't necessarily require that. And so if we have more of something that's and that's based on the needs of the students. That sounds so individualized. I don't know how you would do that, Ryan, but I think it's really important that we recognize that there's a huge spectrum of students that are graduating with different goals all over the place, and we talked about that at our last meeting. Like, we don't know if students are going to med school, we don't know if they're going to trade school, we don't know if they want to be a parent right out of school or go in the military. And so I understand like where that's coming from. I see your hand too, Viv. I'll call you in a second. That way you don't have to keep it up. And Judah too. But I think that's really important that we're more encompassing, where it's not only, because we're tied to those goals for all the students, right?
Well, and I think it doesn't have to be like every student takes AP Calculus, because I don't think that's useful.
Yeah.
It's not useful for a lot of students who go to college.
Right.
But I think there does need to be, I mean, for anybody graduating from high school, there is a certain level of your ability to read and write.
Yeah.
That any employer is going to want a high school graduate to have.
Exactly.
And so I think it doesn't have to be that we're expecting, you know, multiple AP classes or something from our graduates, but we need to have an expectation of a level of academic achievement that allows them to succeed in a job or in college or in raising a family.
So the question I always come back to is that ODE already set that standard of what it means to graduate. And I know it's not necessarily like what the community wants, but that's the requirement to graduate in Oregon. And so we're putting a higher expectation that may not fit the needs or even desires of everybody in the district. And so that's where I have a hard
But ODE
time.
doesn't have those requirements right now. And
To
so
graduate?
that's another, no. And so that's another concern.
No, that ODE has requirements to graduate high school. They do. Yeah, that's what I mean. They have requirements, right? So that's where I'm like, where is our part in this as a local district to supersede Oregon Department of Education's requirements to graduate, or what are our expectations as a community? And I know I don't want to hog up all the time because I'm chair and I feel like I'm taking up too much time. I don't know if Judah or Vibha, who had their hand? So is Judah, sorry, y'all.
So I'll be brief, I hope.
You don't have to be brief, I was taking up all that time.
My philosophy is there's no thinking like overthinking, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and my proposal to the board is that we create two profiles, a profile of a graduate and a profile of a kindergartner, and that when we're focusing on early education, that in that we're focusing on the promises of the opportunities that we're going to be providing students throughout their educational career, so that we're demonstrating our commitment to academic excellence and focusing on individual students' needs, and so focusing there on opportunities and resources, and then for the profile of a graduate on the hopes and aspirations for what our graduates will be doing, so we're getting a better rounded perspective, because I think that if we're trying to collect all these concepts and put them onto the profile of one imaginary graduate, that we're not going to capture the goals of the education experience.
Yeah, I was actually going to talk about like the academic rigor piece that we were talking about. So, like around last week, me and the other board representative, Zoe Demichis, we sent out like a Google form just inside of our school to teachers, as well as teachers and students, as well as to some parents. And we received multiple responses to that one, and we've got an overwhelming majority of them be teachers. And the Google form is literally titled academic rigor. And we had one question is like out of 1 out of 5, how rigorous are your students' classes, your students' classes? A majority of the teachers responded one of them responded with a 2, and a majority of them were 3 and 4. And we also had them write like a small section about why they think. And a lot of these responses weren't coming from the math or English teachers. These were actually coming from like the woodworking teacher and like the actual like trade piece that you're talking about, like how not everyone has to go go to med school or whatever. So and that piece was emphasized, but a majority of the teachers don't think that their own classes are rigorous. Like we heard from the English teacher that said she reported a 3 out of 5. She was the freshman English teacher at Crescent Valley, reported a 3 out of 5 on how rigorous her classes is. 3 out of 5 her classes preparing students for their future. And it was good because I had a discussion with Mr. McKee and Ms. Nikki McFarland yesterday, and kind of the response that I got from them was that it's up to them to determine how rigorous their classes are. But I think it's a problem when teachers are reporting themselves that their classes aren't rigorous enough. If they could really make it more rigorous and they wanted to, why haven't they, right? And their response is like talking about how academic standards, like every student should have a high standard. And what Mr. McKee was telling, a lot of this could come from like pass rates, right? They need to have high passing rates to maintain like a standard in their class, and they have to maintain this balance of like keeping it like rigorous, but also have a passing rate for their class. But at the same time, a lot of these teachers from the CTE department, especially those who teach CTE classes, as well as we have history and literature teachers who are responding to us, saying that they themselves don't feel like their classes are preparing their students for the future. They feel 3 out of 5, right? Like ideally we should want 5 out of 5 on preparing them for the future. And this was also emphasized in the Youth Truth Survey that we send out every year, and only 46%, and this was the data that Ms. McFarland told me, only 46% of teachers feel that way, like about academic rigor and about preparing their students for the future. And so, of course, Youth Truth would be a larger pool of teachers, and I think that itself shows, right? And so saying that it's up to the teachers is one thing, it definitely is, but then if it really is, then why haven't they, right? If they really want to, and this is what they're telling their students, they're telling in these responses, they want to make their classes more rigorous, and they want to, but why haven't they, right? So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I think you're bringing up a deeper issue that is like outside of even the process we're talking about individual teacher selection of curriculum, like what they're teaching that day and what rigor means to them. And so that's something probably for Ryan to take notes on, which I see he has been taking notes. But because no matter if we say rigor in here, if teachers don't feel like they're teaching something rigorous, how do we solve that? It seems like that's the question, right? And so thanks for bringing that up. Go ahead, Shauna.
I really appreciate your comments, Biba. And I'm wondering if what you're talking about actually fits into the strategies under this goal too. And so one of the things I had jotted down just in listening to conversation from other board members was, and from some of the students who spoke tonight too, was that in this goal, it could also be helpful to see reflected that students have access to classes and learning experiences that help them achieve their academic and professional goals. And when we think about what you've just shared, there's a strategy. Ensuring that educators have the support, the autonomy, as well as the resources and time to make sure that their classes are rigorous and meet those standards that the students are looking for in meeting those goals.
Can you read that for me one more time?
Sure, sure. So I said something to the effect, I was thinking about where this would fit in here in saying we will create exceptional learning experiences where all students learn at high levels, either there or before, something related to have access to classes and learning experiences that allow them to, whether we put that before, allow them to learn at high levels, but ultimately that help them achieve their academic and professional goals. And that also comes back to addressing that that may be divergent for different students, or it may look differently.
Thanks, Shauna. And I think you said a lot. What I was trying to say is like it needs to be both. I want to make sure it's really clear to everybody that I value like advanced classes. I took them in high school and like all through high school. And my kids, one of my kids actually takes as high up in classes as are available here in the district as well. And I understand the importance of them. I want to make sure that all the students who are graduating feel reflected in our goals, and finding that happy medium is really hard, as you're hearing with our conversations, even on one goal. Like, how do we say like what a successful graduate looks like when there's all the different career paths and life paths that our students, or the students in our district are choosing. So I'm thankful that we're able to have open communication here. Sammy, you haven't said it. Are you ready? I know you have stuff to say. I was waiting for Sammy's hand to go.
Well, ditto. I think this is a really good conversation, and as a board, we have so much business to do, and this is the most important one of them, I believe. Or I don't want to say most important one of them, but it's going to touch everything we do. And I want us to take the time, the deliberate time to get it right, and proper way to do a good handoff between the 2018-23 goals and the 28 goal, 29 goals, 24-29 goals. So while recognizing the criticality of adopting something quick, this conversation ought to continue. We ought to engage the community. I believe every day I see us doing this, we're doing it like 1,000 times better than I anticipated. And with that point, I think I'm in favor of the excellent learning experience or future-ready learners goal or academic achievement goal to be framed in the way that's really captured this complexity. I don't see it yet there. I want to elevate the really discussion that we had today. I want to elevate really the extensive reports we had from Sarah, and maybe ask staff if we could look not only for goal 1, the profile, but also the other goals. I think critically that's, okay, we're having a first reading, but there might be some good ideas here we need to incorporate and look for. Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to be clear. So you are thinking that I would do, staff would do side by side between the feedback we received from Sarah late today and then with what we currently have. Is that what you're advocating for? I just want to.
And the draft, yes. So you have the draft, you have Sarah's proposal, and also our ideas. So frankly,
the ideas you're sharing tonight.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. And I feel there's so much richness there and critical topics like what we just had about credits versus basic skills, our essential skills, thank you, versus local community expectations. Like we learned that the school district may enact additional graduation requirements like community service or whatever it is. So with all of that in mind, what does that goal mean? and how should we set the goal. So in my words, what I am thinking that we're trying to capture is every student is unique. Every student is going to have an opportunity, and we're going to bridge the opportunity gap for every student to achieve what they want to achieve, understanding there are some essential skills that they need to learn and achieve, and we need to capture those through our credit system, not necessarily definitely not with standardized testing, in my opinion, but also with the additional dimensions that we're trying to capture in the profile.
Thanks, Sammy. Chris, did you have any comments yet?
All I wanted to add was just that as I'm thinking about all of this, and I agree with everything that's been said, that we just, in the back of our minds, continue to think about how do we get kids to graduate who don't have homes to go to each night, that are not being fed at home, and those kind of things that we just, in the back of our minds, are making sure that we have, when we're talking strategies and all that, that we're thinking of support so that they are on a pathway as well. So just, that was my only 2 cents.
Go ahead, Judah.
Well, briefly, nothing for.
And then I'll pass it to Deb, obviously.
This is getting picky, but footnote number 2. I had some recruitive requests that we just list out what the 5 aspects are, just so people can read them out. And I had several community comments, and especially in the small groups last week, where people just wanted to know what are those 5 things that you're talking about, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I wanted to be respectful of that request for clarity.
Yeah.
And maybe a link so that if
Can
people
you
want to
talk?
know more.
You might want to talk closer.
Oh,
Oh,
and maybe a link so that if people are reading the goals and they see those 5 and they want to know more, they have an easy way to find out.
go ahead, Vib.
Yeah, so what I wanted to say about, like, as we're talking about goal 1, and we're talking about, like, the profile of a graduate. In fact, another topic that came up in my discussion with Nikki McFarland and Principal McKee was, like, it's a common concept where, you know, you're a freshman, you're a sophomore, and many times parents and teachers will say, oh, you still have time to decide what you want to do. You still have a lot of time going on. And a lot of times what happens is then you have a senior who wakes up, who after their college applications now, they don't want to do. They've taken classes that maybe their peers have taken just because they haven't, like, you know, taken classes that they really want to do. And now they don't know, like, what do I want to do and what do I want to do? Do I want to go to college? Do I want to do trade school, for example? What do I want to do? And so, and not all students have the, you know, like the parents and the background who will sit with them and talk about it, like talk about school and what classes are you going to take next year? What classes are you going to take this year? What are you interested in? Like, for example, I had the privilege of sitting down with my parents freshman year saying that this is the kind of, like, interest, this is the kind of field, like, for example, I'm interested in doing political science in college, and I know that as a sophomore. I'm not saying that's probably what I'm going to do. I'm not saying that won't change. But, you know, a lot of students don't have the privilege of sitting down with parents and deciding that this is what I want to do, and then building their high school career, as you said, the profile of a graduate around those goals that they have set for themselves. So this is why I feel like the Spartan Success and Raider Success classes that we have in the 9th grade level in our schools are really important. I know there was certainly a level of, you know, talking about what you want to do, but it wasn't like last year as a freshman, I took a Raider Success class at my school, and it was definitely emphasized, you know, like, what do you kind of want to do? But not a lot of students know how to, you know, build a high school resume, if I may put it, you know, around what they want to do, what they're really interested in. So if we can emphasize that at, like, the 9th grade, 10th grade level, you know, emphasize, you know, think about what you want to do, take the classes that you really want to do. For example, I know next year I'll be taking APUSH, AP US History, because that's the field I'm interested in. I don't know if I'll take AP Calculus, you know, so those are the kinds of goals, and those are the kinds of things that we should be, I think, emphasizing in young high school students, so they can be, a successful graduate and actually graduate well out of high school and have a good high school career with them.
Right. And that helps get students excited about what they're learning too, right? When there's agency in that. We're like almost at, we have like 2 minutes left and we're like on goal 1. We tried with a half hour. And Shauna has a process question, so let's, and then I'll come back to you.
It's okay, Chris. So I know that we both have the wanting to make sure goals are established and move forward with that, and also balancing really careful and thoughtful work and deepening our dedication to listening to the community. And I just want to bring back that question of, and we've been talking about first read, moving to a second read, or even a potential adoption, and it feels like we may be missing a critical step in that, or at least it does to me, in terms of going from all of the listening sessions that happened last year to bringing all of that information to the board, to the retreat, to getting things down on paper. Every time we hear from community, from families, from educators, from students, we hear something different in the language, and that could be a process that goes on forever. So of course we can't do that. And at the same time, it feels like it would be helpful to have one additional step rather than just trusting that community will be able to access and come forward to a school board meeting or send us an email asking them to come to our table to give feedback. When a theme that we've heard tonight, as well as repeatedly from the community, is that meetings feel inaccessible, or that conversation feels inaccessible, or that students are looking for ways to hear from us. So just wanted to encourage us to think about making sure we have at least one more community-focused step before we adopt, or just curious what others.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at too, Shauna, because I know that there's, when I mentioned earlier about I think there's community that has provided input that was thinking they were going to get to see the revised. I know we're ahead of schedule because we didn't have much for board reports, so I'm going to use that 10 minutes we're ahead to add on to this conversation. Kim, thank you. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just wondering about the next steps. I really like the profiles of graduate, this document, and wondered what the next step to make this for Corvallis, what we're planning.
First, I wanted to get a sense from the board tonight if that was an area you wanted some intentionality around. Do you feel this concept is valuable as it addresses and attaches to these board goals? So first, what do you think about it? And if you think that it's worth the time, then I would anticipate needing to spend time with community, getting feedback on what those key attributes are, rather than just adopting somebody else's document. So I think the last thing I'll say about that, going back to what Shauna just shared, is that if that's what people are thinking, then about another step with community, then I would tend to incorporate this into that conversation if that's where you're all heading in your minds in terms of the way these two documents work together, or don't.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly that, as well as, I know when we did our August retreat, we had a few educators from the district in the building, but not a lot, and I wondered about maybe opening it up to more staff, especially with building this, and students. So we have, especially with student voice on this profile.
Vibhav, I know you don't speak for every student in the entire district. Having a profile that's more of a graphic with some key points like this, does that feel more student-friendly than just a bunch of text?
Yeah, of course it would be. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it definitely be, yeah.
Okay. That was one of my questions too, is like I want to make sure it feels accessible to the students who we're talking about. And so my question, Ryan, too, for process is if we have a way that we can ask the student reps to bring back, if that's within their scope, to bring back some thoughts on this, as well as to perhaps the safe groups too, of what so working with the student reps and then the safe student leaders on what's important for them as they're leaving Corvallis School District, because I think sometimes we want to talk for students, and I think like having a little more experience in life is helpful to know, like maybe you might want to consider this as thinking about your futures too, but I also think it's important to hear what's important to students. And so is that something we can possibly do?
So just remember, these are your goals.
Yeah, I mean the profile of this graduate.
Yeah,
Okay.
totally. But I mean, that's the piece that I feel like it's feeling like there's a step that you're hoping that I'll take, and also
Is that our
probably
step?
some reticence about whether or not the time and some of those pieces. But at the end of the day, like I would prefer to have a document that you feel addresses what you've heard and feels like something that you can speak to and stand with. So I think if that's the next step in this process, that's the next step in this process.
Okay. I'm wondering if I know, because part of the complexity of being on the board and hearing student voices, we don't reach out to the students directly, like they need to reach out to us. So it would be an invitation to students, if you want to talk to us about these profiles, then perhaps invite us into some of the meeting spaces to hear, instead of like creating another mechanism, like a completely separate meeting.
The other thing I'm thinking about is that the majority of the meetings we held were community-facing meetings. Not many of them were staff-facing.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's an opportunity here, based on what Chris shared. I totally agree with that in terms of getting more feedback from
The
staff.
staff, yeah, exactly. They're the ones teaching the classes.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be helpful.
And one thing Judah, I like your idea about like 2 profiles. The one thing about that I'm sure that you haven't considered yet is just when we think about the skills kindergartners have, there's a lot that's built on exposure and opportunity. And sometimes I think that if we look a little bit further up into the kind of the developmental stages, then there's more school opportunity that we're able to incorporate. So I like the concept, and I also want to be careful about sort of expectations around our kinders.
Well, I just picked kindergarten because that's when they first come into our schools, but my idea behind the concept of 2 profiles is to encompass not just what we're hoping to be out of a graduate, but what kind of a promise that we're providing to students throughout their learning experience for access to opportunities and resources and equity within the schools, so that there it's more, this is our promise to you, not this is just what we're hoping you're going to be.
Totally.
Good, Sammy.
And I thought that was the case, and I just wanted to put that out there.
You're not going to be like, kindergarten, you better be able to cut shapes out of paper. You're so good.
If I may tag along, actually, on this conversation for a second before I go to the same point. I actually initially thought of what you're sharing as a descriptive, what we start the system with, which captures the diversity of our kindergartners students' status as is. Not necessarily a benchmark of what we want to see in terms of skills, or what their expectations or their parents' expectations, community expectations, or school expectations of them, because that might be a mandate for early childhood that they need to work on, but maybe a description of what are we starting with when students enter our system. Well, let's say most students enter our system, because some enter throughout the process. I don't know if that sits in the goals, but that sits very well in strategic planning, where you have benchmarking, you have status, like how you start your process. So I just like that, but definitely maybe it's part of the profile of the graduates, is that we recognize where they start. Excuse me. The second point I was just wanting to highlight is really about this process. In summary of this discussion, I feel we had divergence and convergent thinking, or we were like asking community for inputs, summarizing goals through the retreats, and now we're diverging another time, and maybe diverging a little bit more. We had very specific products as a first read, And I want us to be comfortable. I think we are comfortable with this discomfort that we're getting divergent ideas that will get us converge again to another document. And it's really important because the community is sharing feedback with us, and it is valuable. And while it's taking some time, but this process is actually making the product even much better. So really celebrating this process, while it may take a little bit more time than planned.
Speaking of, we have 3 minutes left, and want to make sure we're is there thoughts on other goals? Can we open it beyond goal 1? I did want to say I do appreciate all the work you all put in this, Ryan, and like having the footnotes like we asked for. I know there's asked for further definition of those, but I do appreciate so far like seeing everything revised. But any other goals to highlight? Or it might open more than a 2-minute conversation.
Procedurally, I'm wondering if we want to take what we have and get some community feedback on it before we go any further into that discussion. Do people feel okay with that?
I'm wondering too, Ryan, what that looks like. Is it because I know like some of the groups that meet for the district don't meet till January or in the winter, and so like
This is going to take time.
I know it's going to take time, and it's okay to take time.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, when you're talking about the provisional adoption, so you can start on the work, if it changes dramatically, though, would that mess up all the work you all are doing on the pieces under what were they called under the strategy?
Activities.
Activities under the strategies.
I think that what would be helpful from you all would be to just get a general sense of, like on a 1 to 10, 10 is like this is crystal clear and done, and 1 is start over, some sense of that. And the reason why I ask that is because this next step will take some time.
Right. Sammy looks like.
I have a number for you.
Oh my God.
You're not going to like it. 5.000.
5.0.
5.0.
There's 2 zeros on there.
Which is really recognizing we may need to pivot. Here's what I'm struggling with. If we do provisionally, we give direction, and also we give a little bit of commitment that we're not going to change it a lot. And this is really exciting. We have a white canvas where we can write anything on it, and we have lots of great ideas. And this possibility of changing things is really exciting in terms of setting the goals, really challenging for the institution in terms of having clear path of what's next.
Well, we have current goals, so there's things that we're currently working on. So that just means that those are the things we keep working on.
Exactly.
And that's why I asked that question too, Ryan, because I don't want you to, in the staff, to put all kinds of work into provisional goals and then just say goal 1 changes entirely and the strategies. I don't know if it would necessarily do that, but then you invested all that time. And so I'm wondering, even as we're thinking about it, and we're out of time that we extended, but and are going to have to move on here in a minute, but if there's certain goals that feel more comfortable too, if that's a possibility, to give like some direction on, maybe you can start working on some of the pieces, the activities for some of them. I'm just throwing ideas out there at this point for the board to think about, but I do appreciate getting more input on it, and also want to point out to community that it will be near impossible to capture every single thing everybody wants in it, including everything the board wants in it, as you can hear from our discussions. But so I want to be realistic on that too, that we do want the input and we want to make sure we're getting it closer to feeling where it represents multiple aspects of our community.
So is there consensus on a 5.0, or should we get this sense from other board members?
I'd give it a 6.5, but we're a minute over time. And I'll fight with Sammy in private.
Any other numbers between 5 and 6.5 or a different area? Other than you all's, I should say.
My sense is that we're on the right track, but have work to do.
Yeah.
think I would be hesitant to give a number before having more input from staff and students in particular, because if we walk out and say, well, 8 or 9, then we're also not leaving ourselves open to that feedback.
For sure.
So,
I think my number varies by goal.
Yeah, exactly. What do you got, Chris?
I'm just going to make it easy. I give it a 7 right now.
That's very nice, Chris. I don't like number scoring. Sorry. I'll write a narrative for you about it. Just kidding. Okay.
Just want to make clear, this number system is not grading anything. It's about 1, we're not ready at all. 10, it's crystal clear. Like I give 10 out of 10 in terms of how we're progressing on this. I would say, like, just sorry.
I know. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and probably take our break at this moment. Would probably be a good idea. It's 8 o'clock and it's 8:02 because we have a few more things to cover this evening. Or should we keep? Do you want to? I think we can get through it. Vibha, if you want to stay, you're welcome to. It's also 8. I know student reps sometimes leave around that time. It's like voting on some things. So let's go ahead and keep on rolling then. We have the OSBA Association election and resolutions. The first one is the OSBA Legislative Policy Committee election, position number 10. Does anyone have any discussion on that?
I find that the candidate that's been presented to us is very well qualified, and I have no reservations at all.
Any other discussion on, would anybody like to make a motion?
Also move.
Anybody want to second that?
Second.
Okay. Okay, it has been moved by Judah and seconded by Chris. Is there any further discussion?
I just want to clarify that the reason, like, since we didn't say what we just said we're moving, that the reason I'm not making the motion is because it's to elect me to the OSBA Legislative Policy Committee. So that's what we're voting on right now.
That will be said next. But thanks for clarifying, Sarah. Okay. It has been moved by Judah and seconded by Chris to vote for Sarah Finger McDonald for position number 10 on the OSBA Legislative Policy Committee. Sammy?
Aye.
Judah?
Aye.
Shauna?
aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I vote aye, so that passes unanimously. Congratulations for that. And then the next one is OSBA Resolution Number 1 creates the Oregon Rule Board Members Caucus and designates a seat on the OSBA Board of Directors and Legislative Policy Committee. Is there any discussion on this one, this resolution? Does anybody wish to make a motion?
I gotta make a motion.
Anybody wish to make a motion?
I move to adopt OSBA's resolution to amend the bylaws relating to the composition of the Board of Directors.
Second.
Was that Sammy? Yes. Okay. It has been moved by Shauna and seconded by Sammy. Any further discussion? Not that we had any, so. Okay, it has been moved by Shauna and seconded by Sammy to adopt OSBA's resolution to amend the bylaws relating to the composition of the Board of Directors. Sammy?
Aye.
Judah?
Aye.
Shauna?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we have one more OSBA resolution, and that's number 2. It adopts the proposed amendments to the OSBA bylaws. Any discussion or questions or anything? I don't know if we can answer questions anyways, but.
I can.
Oh, Sammy can answer questions. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move to adopt OSBA's resolution to amend the OSBA's 2018 bylaws.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved by Shauna and seconded by Sarah. Any discussion after that? Okay. It has been moved by Shauna and seconded by Sarah to adopt OSBA's resolutions to amend the OSBA's 2018 bylaws. Sammy?
Aye.
Judah?
Aye.
Shauna?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I vote aye, so that passes unanimously as well. Oof, that was really loud. Okay, cool. That's all of our, all of those. And then we're moving on to consolidated action. As a reminder, the items under this portion of the agenda are for action. Does anyone have a question about anything in consolidated action? Okay, does anyone wish to make a motion?
I move that we approve the items in consolidated action.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Sarah and seconded by Sammy.
I-
You have something?
I have this question, if that's okay and proper. I know we're already in the motion.
You of all people. I'm just
So,
kidding.
you know.
I'm joking. Go ahead, Sammy.
It's really a question for staff or Ryan about the transportation agreement. If there is any highlights about the challenges and I don't want to discuss the vendor, of course, but our challenges in fulfilling the needs of our students through their transportation needs, and if there's anything we need to elevate to the board as we are discussing the transportation agreement.
The two things I'd share. The first is that we've had more success in hiring drivers this fall than we've had for the last 3 years. So we've been able to fill our routes, which is a positive thing. This contract in itself is looking at some of the aspects that allow them to stay competitive, to bring folks on, thinking about things like inflationary costs and some of those pieces. And also having some sideboards on that. So those are the things that have come to be part of this renewal or updated contract. Olivia, is there anything else you would want to add based on what I shared?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, it has been moved by Sarah and seconded by Sammy to adopt the consolidated action items as submitted. Sammy?
Aye.
Judah?
Aye.
Shauna?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I vote aye, passes unanimously. Awesome. And then the next thing is consolidated information. As a reminder, the items under this portion of the agenda are for discussion. Would anyone like to discuss an item in consolidated information? Did somebody say yes? Okay. Judah would like to discuss something, and we will wait for a
I have
second.
a question, actually.
And Sarah, go
Sorry.
ahead.
Yeah, it was about the charter numbers. And I guess it's not specifically about this report, but sort of charter and homeschooling numbers in general. I was curious how we've heard a lot about enrollment in public schools and where students are going, and there's more homeschooling happening. And I was just wondering how, if we know, if you have this in front of you're on the top of your head, how these numbers compare to last year, because I know reading national news articles about this, some of those numbers are starting to slowly trend back down, and so I was just wondering what we're looking like.
So in terms of homeschool numbers, we are moving back in the we're not back to pre-pandemic yet, but the number of students in homeschooling have gone down from this year compared to last year. So we're getting closer to what we had seen historically. We still have smaller numbers of students, but we've talked about the reasons for that before, primarily housing costs in our community, and folks are having fewer children, generally speaking. So we know that those things are going to continue to be true and persist for us, but we also see fewer kids that are families that are opting for homeschooling than we did during the pandemic.
Yeah, I understood the enrollment piece, but I've seen national trends showing that number is starting to come down, and I was wondering if we were following the same pattern. So thanks.
So,
Go ahead, Judah.
yeah, Ryan, I had a question about policy EFA and kind of following up on some information that Melissa brought to our attention about being out of compliance with physical activity in the classroom. And my question was looking at the changes because of House Bill 3199, which reduces the amount of activity from 225 minutes to 150 minutes. Are we looking for a compliance currently at 225 minutes, or we're still out of compliance for the 150 minutes? And are there any other changes that need to be addressed? I know that issue that was pending.
So Melissa asked me to take notes on questions related to wellness policies tonight. So I'm going to take that as a question, if that's okay, and we'll get that information to you. She's been working on this wellness policy quite extensively, and so I want to be able to let her bring that back at the next read, if that's okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Is there anything else under consolidated information? Well, we could have kept talking about board goals. We're on board member comments is our next order. Go ahead, Sammy.
I just want to highlight today is a really important day in Portland. The teachers are striking, and my heart and soul with them, and I joined them in their ask. And it's an awkward place for a board member to say that, but we got to say it. And also, as proposed, we support board members throughout negotiations and school districts throughout negotiations. But I want to highlight really how big the gap they have, $200 million, and I hope that they continue on the table and a resolution happens. But I want to publicly celebrate their right to strike is an important right that they're practicing and support it, I would say. And in that line, in that vein, really appreciate how our teachers, our classified staff, both the association negotiated with us and how our board negotiated. Something unique we have is the board liaison concept that I came to realize and understand it's not in every district. And anecdotally, I would say it's been very helpful for us to reach a resolution while recognizing there's so much we need to do for our teachers and classified staff and also non-represented staff as well. That being said, the work that we do together, sits across the table and negotiates, and having the board work with the superintendent and his team and having a board liaison there, I'm seeing it's so crucial to bring a resolution or a tentative agreement into fruition, and I'm really thankful and honored to join in the last cycle. That being said, it's really a problem that's going to hit everywhere in the state if the legislator don't act. $200 million gap is huge, and it will not be filled without, in my opinion, it will not be filled without an action by the legislator to fund education at a level that's a quality education level. So I know maybe I'm way out of that standard of speaking about something happening in another district and about labor and board, but we gotta lean in on those conversations and say, this is tough, and communities are struggling, and I know our communities are connected, and with that, really recognizing the hard work that they're doing there and the hard work that our teachers and classified staff are doing here, and want to appreciate their advocacy and fighting throughout the process during bargaining and in between bargaining as well.
Thanks, Sammy. Any other board comments? Go ahead, Sarah. We'll go Sarah, Judah, Chris. I think it's like,
Do you want to go first? I just want to clarify something I said earlier in the meeting about OSBA graduation standards. We have standards for the classes and credits that students earn in certain subjects, but the essential skills that students are supposed to demonstrate in those classes have been waived, and now have been that waiver has been extended through the 27-28 academic year. And what I've heard from community members, and actually from staff members too, is that I am confident that students who finish 4 years of English classes in Corvallis school districts can read and write at a level that would allow them to be successful in a job or go on to college. But what I've heard is from community members and again from staff members is that they, without those essential skills being required to be demonstrated by the state, they would like to have some kind of statement in our profile of a graduate or in our goals that says, beyond completing your 4 credits in English, we expect our students, when they graduate from those 4 years of English, to have a level of skills that's, so that we have a standard that we're expecting them to meet. So when I said, there's no standards anymore for graduation, it's not quite that simple, but I mean, it's not something I worry about for our district, but I think it's also a statement we need to make.
Thanks for that clarification for everyone, Sarah.
I just want to compliment district-wide about our thoughtfulness to student safety, as I have been dropping off kids in the morning and picking grandkids up. I just really commend that there are a lot of staff visible outside, making sure kids are being, getting into the classroom or into the school safely, as well as being picked up. I also appreciate, Ryan, your comments about having to make those difficult decisions on snowy and icy mornings. I know that's not easy, and I know that you never please everyone, and that's really difficult, but I'm glad that you're thinking about our kids, especially those that are driving. And so I just appreciate how this district thinks about safety for our kids.
Good, Judah. Oh, Vibhav. I was like, I thought it was your turn.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to talk about like the public comments that came through today, and especially I'm sure like a lot of you are aware like there was a petition sent out last week calling for the protection of honors and AP math classes, and I think so. When we look at this this situation, right? It's a very big situation, but the biggest problem, as many of the public comments stated, is communication. We need proper communication going from the staff at our school to students, from the board members to students, board members to teachers, from the executive team cabinet to students, executive team cabinet to staff, right? So when someone asks us, where are you hearing all this, right? Where are you hearing that we're gonna take away AP math classes? Now, I'm not gonna name names, but we're hearing it from our teachers. It's not just something we're making up. It's not something that we're just saying, they're removing AP classes, guys, come on, we have to sign a petition, right? We're hearing it from our teachers. Our teachers are saying this. So it's not something we've just made up in our mind to, kind of get our 15 minutes of fame. But it's something that we are hearing. And if anything, if what the teachers are saying is wrong, then that shows the failure of communication from the board, whatever the board goals and board members are doing, to the teachers. Because if the teachers are not communicating the right thing to their students, then it's not the teacher's fault. It's the teacher who doesn't have the information, right? So our teachers have told us, like the teacher I have right now, it's going to be his last year teaching what he teaches as honors geometry, what has been honors geometry for the past 15, 20 years at our school. He is not going to teach anymore. So the conception, what people think when he says that, right, is that there is not going to be honors geometry anymore, right? That's what happens when a teacher announces that honors geometry is no longer going to be taught at school. What the people don't know is that the district is actually bringing so let's be very clear. It's not the same honors geometry, okay? I've heard from people, I've heard from Nikki McFarland. She says that it is the same honors geometry, but our teachers are very clearly saying it's not the same honors geometry. Going on to the academic rigor part, it's not the same level of content and rigor that they have taught it at for the past 15, 20 years, and that's changing. Whether that may be a good thing or a bad thing, we still don't know yet because the curriculum hasn't been fully adopted and hasn't been taught. Right? But the information that needs to be passed on is very essential. We need to understand that first a curriculum is being adopted for -- reasons. These classes have been happening for this long, will not be happening for this long. We will be introducing something else. a new curriculum is not a bad thing, right? It could be an amazing thing. It could be a bad thing. We don't know yet because it hasn't been taught. And that's what the teachers are saying too, right? The new AP Pre-Calculus, the AP Pre-Calculus class that's being introduced at Crescent Valley will only lead to AP Calculus AB. So the honors pre-calculus class that exists today leads to honors pre-calculus with derivatives, that's the class name, will lead to AP Calculus BC. It is only because of that second part with derivatives that it's leading to BC. So that class will not exist. It'll be AP Pre-Calculus. AP Pre-Calculus is a nationwide curriculum, right? It's the College Board curriculum that only leads to AB. So a lot of the information that students get is only coming from their teachers. For example, I have had to sit down with my teacher after class and ask them what's going on in my school. That shouldn't be the case. I should be getting emails from my principal, from the school board, talking about these are the curriculum changes that are happening. This is how your education is going to look like. This is how future students' education is going to look like. I shouldn't have to go and ask my teacher. I shouldn't have to go and hear from other students what's going on. So that's why I think the first problem is communication. We need proper communication going from the administration to the students, administration to the staff. And that's the only way we can, not have things like, guys, all AP and honors math classes are being taken away, right? That's the only way we can actually address those kinds of things that people get really panicked about, right? That's the only way we can stop that from happening and have a proper civil discussion about the changes that are happening in our school district. So, and it's also important to note that 1,200 people signed that petition. That shows how much parents actually care. Parents and students care about their education. They're not going to stay silent about it. But we need the district board and the administration to communicate with parents. And honestly, I wasn't happy with the fact that the email sent out by the principals was only sent out to the parents, right? It was in response to a petition that was started by a student, but why was it only sent out to parents, right? So, and again, that leads on to the fact that people who have parents working 3 jobs, they don't have time, their parents don't have time to go and check these emails, right? So this is where the communication gap begins. 1, with students who can actually voice their interests. 2, with students who are, for example, second language learners, they will have much more confusion about what's actually going on, right? So that's basically what, the biggest takeaway from the public comments that came out today, I think we should really think about, is the communication that happens between the administration, staff, and students, right? We need effective communication that will stop misinformation from being spread and these kinds of panic situations from happening.
So what I'd like you to remember is that the teachers at CV met today,
right,
and the teachers at CHS met yesterday. They are still working on this, and that's where sometimes I think that's an important piece, that teachers need to be able to do that work and then communicate about it, not communicate about it halfway through and create those situations where there is lack of trust later on because things are said or things are considered that don't end up coming to fruition. And that's the piece that I also think is important in the conversation, is that the work is underway right now.
Right. Yeah, I definitely think that's important too. But because this has been happening for the past 8 years. This discussion has been happening about math and curriculum changes. So I think we just need more communication.
Right. Thank you, Vibha, for that. I just wanted to say that I recognize the amount of vulnerability it takes for students to speak up, especially when pointing out systematic issues. So thank you for your vulnerability in that. I wanted to make sure to clarify too for community and for you as a student rep that the board doesn't make those decisions about the curriculum. We adopt new curriculum coming in, but those level changes are not something the board actually oversees. So I want to make sure that that part is that way to help with that communication too. And I'm on the constant mission of making our role more clear, especially with the community, that way folk know. So, and I know Judah had a comment too. Did you just have something real quick?
Yeah, and so that's what whatever curriculum what is going to be adopted, what has been adopted, we don't know if that's a good or bad thing, and the students have their own opinions, but the big point is we don't know, right? because it hasn't been, the classes that are going to come in haven't been taught yet. We don't know how they're going to affect us. But we want to stay up to date in what's happening right now, what is going on.
That's very good feedback for communication. I think you're doing it very good. Judah?
I wanted to bring forth something else that came out in public comment, which is issues of the communication barrier or the power differential between people who are wanting to come to the board and make comment and those who feel that they are able to do so or feel comfortable doing so. And this is pertinent to the discussion that was going on in the district, and I know that there's concrete actionable steps that are being taken, but something that I want to put out is that, like you said earlier, we can't go out into the community and be having these discussions separate from these board meetings, that we are reliant on a system where folks are coming to us and addressing concerns. And sometimes the concerns that are brought to the board are not things that the board can take action on, but that's what how people feel that they can connect, and those requests are then passed forward to the district, and recognizing how much of a sacrifice that people make to make these comments. And to sum up, to say, when we're thinking about trying to reduce those barriers to communicating with the school board, that a lot of what we would be relying on to make changes to make things more inclusive are our own assumptions, or my own assumptions, of what is necessary, what is an accommodation, what is communication that would be helpful to make these meetings accessible, and to, say that if there is something that needs to be done or a need that needs to be recognized, and it's just a spot that we hadn't considered, that I would just encourage the community, educators, students, anyone to come forward and say, here is an identified barrier, or here's especially an identified barrier for this community, and here's how we can meet that need, because sometimes we don't know that we need to make change until somebody brings that forward to us, and that I'm not making an assumption, and that I would know everything, every way to make these meetings very accessible, or every need that every person has, where they could be coming and making those comments and having that interaction with the board and kind of by proxy with the district.
Anything, Shauna?
I'll just add gratitude for those who came tonight to share through public comment, as well as many of the emails that we received over the week. We've been getting lots of communication from folks when challenges come up, when communication comes up, or sometimes miscommunication of folks wanting to clarify, asking for that connection, and just really appreciating folks having the courage to do that, taking the time to do that, and what a gift it is for us to receive that feedback, even when it's challenging at times, to think about the things that we need to be working on and improving to continue to improve those relationships. And just, it's clearly coming out, that need that we've known and identified ourselves around communication, and really looking at all of those pathways that we can contribute to, as well as others. So just wanted to share gratitude for that. And also, I'll echo your gratitude earlier, Lou, for educators and staff who are managing conferences this week and spending that time really thoughtfully reflecting on students, connecting with families, and we know that that takes a lot of time, dedication, and effort, and really appreciate that.
I forgot to say, congratulations to Melissa.
Yes, make sure to tell Melissa congratulations.
I'll be sure she knows.
Okay, and again, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming tonight and for all the public testimony. I know today's an important day too for members of the community. It's Dia de los Muertos, so I just wanted to point that out too. And also that if you have feedback, thanks for emailing us and meeting with us individually. And if you want to email the whole board, we all get it at the same time at, I already forgot, it's board@corvallis.k12.or.us if you'd like to email us at the same time instead of typing all our emails out. And with that, it is 8:31, so meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, tech support. Chris has cookies up here, everybody.